The discovery of the lost world. The stars stretched across the dark void of space, countless lights scattered like diamonds in a vast ocean of black. The Empire, an ancient and powerful force, controlled hundreds of worlds and hundreds of civilizations. Their empire was vast, but even they knew there were places in the universe they had not yet discovered. They had explored countless planets, studied thousands of species, and conquered entire systems, but there were still mysteries out there. Then came the discovery. It started with a faint signal, a small, almost insignificant blip on the Empire's radar. At first, it seemed like just another glitch. But when the scouts took a closer look, they noticed something strange. This blip was consistent. Unlike the usual space interference that came from meteor showers or space debris, this signal came from an uncharted corner of the galaxy. It wasn't random. It was organized. Is it from a nearby planet? Commander Vrix, one of the Empire's top navigators, asked as he stared at the star map in front of him. Double quotes, no, it's not coming from any of the known worlds. His assistant, Kale, replied, his voice filled with confusion. In fact, it seems to be coming from a region we have never mapped before. It's almost like it's intentionally hidden. Commander Vrix narrowed his eyes. Hidden. The idea of a hidden world, an unknown civilization, excited him. For years, the Empire had scoured the galaxy for new resources, new species, to bring under their control. But this was different. We need to investigate, Vrix ordered, and so, the Empire's best exploration ship, the Nebula's Edge, was dispatched to the coordinates where the signal had been detected. Its mission was simple: find the source of the signal and report back. The journey through deep space was long, but the crew was eager. They had no idea what awaited them in this unknown region, but the thought of discovering something new stirred their hearts with excitement. As they approached the coordinates, the crew braced themselves. The star map showed a dense cluster of stars, yet there was one planet in the midst of it all. This planet was dark, strangely dark. No signs of any advanced civilization, no space stations, no signs of life at all. But the signal, that consistent pulse, still echoed in the emptiness. We are within range, Commander, Kale reported as they neared the planet's orbit. I'm picking up faint energy readings. Vrix leaned forward. Energy readings? What kind of energy? It's unlike anything we've seen before. It's not exactly technological, but it's not natural either. I can't explain it. Something about this place felt wrong to the crew, an unsettling feeling that crept over them the closer they got. Yet there was a pull and invisible force that beckoned them closer. The signal grew louder, clearer. The crew felt the tension in the air, the anticipation building. It was as if they were on the verge of uncovering something that had been hidden for millennia. Let's land, Vrix said, a sense of unease creeping into his voice. The nebula's edge descended through the planet's thick, swirling atmosphere. As they got closer to the surface, the planet came into view: green forests, wide rivers, and towering mountains. It was like Earth, but untouched by the chaos of modern life. The air was thick, fresh, and alive. The planet had a strange beauty, a serenity that was almost too perfect. We've arrived, Kale said, his voice tense. The signal is coming from the center of the planet. It's not far. Without hesitation, Vrix ordered the team to prepare for exploration. They equipped themselves with everything they would need: scanners, survival gear, and weapons in case they encountered anything dangerous. The group made their way down the ship's ramp and onto the unknown world. The ground was soft, the grass beneath their boots thick and lush. It was clear no one had ever stepped here before. As they ventured deeper into the planet's interior, the crew began to see strange structures, ruins, half buried in the earth. They were old, older than anything the Empire had ever encountered. There were intricate carvings on the stone, symbols that seemed to pulse with energy, as if they had a life of their own. "This is incredible," Kale whispered. "These ruins, they're like nothing we've seen before." But Vrix didn't share his excitement. His eyes scanned the area with caution. "Something's not right," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. The team moved forward, deeper into the ruins. The signal led them into a cavernous underground structure. The walls were lined with what appeared to be advanced technology, but it was unlike any technology the Empire had ever encountered. It didn't seem mechanical, seemed alive, pulsing, breathing. "We need to be careful," Vrix said, his voice low. "This could be dangerous." And then they found it. At the heart of the structure, in the deepest part of the ruins, was an enormous chamber. In the center stood a strange artifacted glowing sphere, surrounded by glowing symbols. The sphere pulsed with energy, and the signal they had been following came from within it. But what stunned them the most were the figures standing around it, humans, alive. They were not ancient ghosts, but living beings. Their eyes met the explorers with curiosity, not fear. They stood there, in the heart of this forgotten civilization, completely unaware of the Empire's presence. The Empire had found what they had been searching for, a lost world, a thriving civilization, and a human race that had survived against all odds. But the question remained, how had they survived all this time? And more importantly, what would the Empire do now that they had found them? The adventure was just beginning, and the crew of the Nebula's Edge had no idea what secrets lay hidden in this lost civilization. The Empire's shock. The crew stood in stunned silence, their eyes locked on the humans who had appeared out of nowhere, standing in the heart of the forgotten ruins. The Empire had sent its finest team to explore the mystery of this lost world, expecting perhaps ruins, perhaps traces of a dead civilization. But they never imagined this. Humans, alive. Not only that, thriving. It was a sight no one had predicted, and for a moment there was an eerie stillness in the air. The Empire's explorers exchanged nervous glances, uncertain how to proceed. The humans, on the other hand, appeared calm and unfazed by the sudden appearance of the foreign invaders. They looked different from the humans the Empire knew, their clothing worn yet practical, their expressions unreadable but calm. "Commander, do we approach them?" Kale's voice trembled, breaking the silence. His hands gripped his equipment tightly as though waiting for an order, any order, to make sense of this encounter. Vrix, ever the calculated leader, took a step forward, his boots softly crunching against the alien ground. His mind raced as he tried to comprehend what stood before him. These humans, how had they survived here for so long, isolated and unknown to the galaxy? They looked unchanged by time, as though they were part of this ancient world. One of the humans, a woman, stepped forward from the group. She was taller than most humans Vrix had encountered, her skin tanned from the harsh conditions of the world, her eyes sharp and bright with intelligence. She regarded the Empire's crew without fear. "I suppose you're wondering why we are still here." She spoke in perfect Galactic standard, her voice steady and clear. It was as if she had been expecting them all along. "The last survivors aren't we?" Vrix blinked, caught off guard by her calmness. How could she speak their language? What was this place? What kind of civilization had they found here? You, ... You speak our language? Cale asked in disbelief. The woman smiled, but there was no warmth in it, only a knowing, almost sad, expression. We've been here longer than you think. Long before your empire's rise. We learned, we adapted, we survived. Her words seemed to linger in the air, heavy with meaning. The humans had survived here, hidden from the universe, learning, adapting. Something more than just the humans the Empire knew. They had clearly gone through more than what the Empire was prepared to understand. But the bigger question was, how? Vrix tried to steady his thoughts, his mind racing through possibilities. These humans, who were they? What had happened to their civilization? What had happened to the rest of the universe? Why had they never been discovered before? What is this place? Vrix finally asked, his voice sharp with command. What happened to your people? The woman's gaze softened, and for a moment her eyes seemed distant, as though reliving a painful memory. She took a breath before answering. Once, we were like you, she said quietly. We were part of the greater galaxy. We traded, we fought, we lived. But then, something changed. A cataclysmic event. It destroyed much of our world, and in the chaos, we had to retreat. The Empire never knew, because we made sure it stayed. Hidden, the words sent a ripple of shock through the crew. A cataclysmic event. What kind of disaster could have wiped out an entire civilization, yet left a group of humans still alive and thriving? How did you survive? How did you stay hidden for so long? Cale asked, his voice full of awe. The woman's face hardened. We retreated to the depths of our planet. We adapted. We built technology different from what your empire knows. Ancient tech, but advanced in its own way. It's not just about surviving. It's about staying hidden, staying safe. At this, Vrix's mind clicked. Hidden technology. Something that could have kept them concealed for centuries. Something that might have allowed them to stay alive all this time. The realization hit him hard. This was no ordinary world. These humans weren't just survivors. They were guardians, protectors of an ancient power. A power the Empire might have been too blind to understand. A sudden rumbling shook the ground beneath them. It was subtle at first, but soon the tremors grew stronger. The Empire's team steadied themselves, looking around in alarm. What is that? Cale asked urgently. The woman's expression grew serious. It's the signal, she said, glancing at the artifact they had found earlier. The energy you are feeling. It's what has kept us hidden. But now, the time has come for it to wake. And so must we. As the last word left her mouth, the ground beneath their feet began to crack open, revealing glowing lines of energy coursing through the planet. It was as if the planet itself was awakening. The air thickened with power, and the temperature began to rise. What have you done? Vrix demanded, his voice laced with panic. What is this power? It is not our doing, the woman replied. Calmly, this planet has its own heartbeat, its own energy, and now it is calling to you, to your empire. The shock on Vrix's face deepened as the rumbling grew louder. He realized, with a sinking feeling in his stomach, that the discovery of this lost civilization was not merely about finding survivors. The real secret was something far more powerful, something the Empire had unknowingly walked into. The woman took a step back, her eyes narrowing as she faced the rumbling ground. The Empire is not ready for what lies beneath this world, but you will learn soon enough. The signal from the planet grew louder, the energy thrumming in the air like the pulse of a living creature. Vrix felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end as the ground beneath them continued to shake. The humans had kept the secret hidden for centuries, but now that it was awakening, the Empire might have unleashed something they couldn't control. Vrix stood frozen in place, his mind racing. What had they uncovered? What kind of power had they just stumbled upon? And more importantly, was it too late to turn back? The humans, secretars. The rumbling subsided. The world around the Empire's crew settled into an eerie quiet. The air was thick with tension, and every member of the team could feel it, a sense of foreboding, as if they had awakened something far older and more dangerous than they could have imagined. The glowing energy lines that had appeared on the surface continued to pulse in rhythmic waves, lighting up the cavernous chamber like veins of living light. The humans, seemingly unfazed by the strange occurrences, began to move toward the artifact at the center, the sphere that had started all of this, the woman who had first spoken to them, whose name, they had learned, was Alira, moved with purpose. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, flicked between Vrix and the glowing artifact, as if expecting the Empire to understand something that, at that moment, they could not. "You must leave," she said, her voice a stark contrast to the earlier calm. "This planet does not belong to you, and neither does the power you seek." The words struck Vrix like a slap in the face. He had expected resistance, but not this. Not this open defiance, not so soon after discovering what had truly been hidden. On this planet, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was an empire that ruled entire systems, conquered whole planets without question. Yet here, on this lost world, humans had not only survived, they had thrived, and now they were telling him to leave. "I don't think you understand, Alira," Vrix said, his voice laced with authority. "This discovery is a gift to your people. We could share it with the galaxy, bring your technology into the light. You have no idea what the Empire can do for you." Alira's face hardened. "And you have no idea what the Empire will do to us once you take what we've kept hidden. We have survived because we stayed away. We are not like the humans, you know. We are different." At her words, the crew grew uneasy. They had never encountered a race of humans quite like these. They weren't just survivors, they were something more. Something dangerous. The air in the chamber seemed to crackle with energy, growing thicker with each passing second. It was as if the planet itself was alive, reacting to the tension in the air, to the conflict brewing in the hearts of the two. "Groups, show us what you mean," Vrix said, a challenge in his voice. He had heard of ancient, powerful civilizations before, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of what he was about to witness. Alira nodded and gestured to the artifact. She spoke a series of words in a language that Vrix didn't understand, and the sphere in the center of the chamber began to glow brighter, its light growing so intense that the crew had to shield their eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble again. This time, the vibrations were not a mere rumbling, they were deeper, more profound, as if the entire planet was reacting to something. With a loud, echoing roar, a massive door hidden in the walls of the chamber opened, revealing a dark passage leading deep underground. The air grew colder, and the crew could feel the pull of something ancient drawing them toward it. "What is this?" Vrix asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This," Alira said, her tone grave, "is what we've kept hidden from the galaxy. What no one was meant to find." The crew hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. They had come to find a civilization, to claim a new world for the Empire. But now they were faced with a decision. They could turn back, leave the planet, and return with nothing but the knowledge of its existence. Or they could follow the path that was now open to them and uncover what lay beneath. The rest of the crew exchanged looks. Fear and excitement filled the air, and the decision was made. They couldn't turn back now. Not after what they had seen. Vrix, despite the caution in the back of his mind, gave the order. We move forward. We need to know what's down there. Alira's eyes narrowed as she regarded him, and for a brief moment it seemed as if she might object. But then she nodded, the weight of centuries of hidden history in her gaze. You'll regret this, she said softly. You won't be the same once you see what's down there. The crew gathered their equipment, moving toward the opening in the stone. The air grew even colder as they descended deeper into the cavern, the walls slick with moisture. The light from their torches barely made a dent in the overwhelming darkness that surrounded them. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became. It was as if the very planet itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Finally, they reached the bottom of the passage. In front of them stood a large, circular chamber. At the center of it was an enormous object to something, so ancient, so massive, that it seemed to defy belief. It looked like a machine, but it was covered in thick vines and roots, as though nature itself had tried to reclaim it over the centuries. This is it, Alira said, her voice barely a whisper, the source of our power. Vrix felt a shiver run down his spine. The machine in front of them was unlike anything he had ever seen. It hummed with an energy that was both alien and familiar, a power that seemed to reach out and touch the deepest parts of his soul. The humans had hidden this secret for so long, and now the Empire had found it. But the question that lingered in Vrix's mind was simple. What would happen if the Empire tried to claim this power? Would they survive what was hidden in this lost world, or would the planet's dark secrets consume them all? It was a gamble, and there was no turning back. Now, the first encounter, as the crew of the nebula's edge stepped into the massive chamber, the air seemed to hum with energy. The colossal machine before them, draped in ancient vines and pulsating with a mysterious force, felt alive. The hum was a low, almost imperceptible vibration, but it was constant. As if it had been waiting for something, waiting for them, Vrix stood at the threshold of the chamber, his eyes fixed on the machine. The dim light from their torches flickered in the overwhelming darkness, casting strange shadows across the walls. But it was the machine that dominated the space, its strange shape both awe-inspiring and unnerving. It had an organic quality to it, as though it wasn't made by machines, but rather grown from the planet itself. This is beyond anything we've seen, Kale muttered, awe and fear mixing in his voice. He took a step forward, but Vrix held up a hand, signaling for caution. We don't know what it does yet, Vrix said, his voice low and controlled. Stay alert. If this is what Alira claims, we need to understand it before making any decisions. Alira had been eerily silent since they entered the chamber, her gaze fixed on the machine. Her face, normally confident and firm, now showed a flicker of concern. She had warned them about this moment, but it seemed even she didn't fully understand. What would happen next? Without a word, she stepped toward the machine. The crew followed her, their movements tentative, as if they feared disturbing something ancient and fragile. Alira's hand reached out and touched one of the vines that wrapped around the machine. The moment her fingers made contact, the humming intensified. It felt like the chamber itself was alive, reacting to her touch. The walls vibrated, and the air seemed to grow thicker, as though the entire planet was holding its breath. Suddenly, a voice echoed in the chamber. It wasn't human, but it was unmistakably clear. The voice was soft, deep, and ancient, reverberating in the bones of the crew. "Why have you come?" Vrix froze. The voice was not from a living being, but it was unmistakably sentient. The crew looked at each other, their faces pale. Alira's expression was unchanged, but there was a hint of something in her eyes, something that told Vrix she knew exactly what was happening. "Who are you?" Vrix demanded, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. He could feel his pulse quicken, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. This was beyond anything they had prepared for. The voice continued, its tone calm yet unsettling. "We are the Guardians. We have watched over this world for centuries, keeping it safe from those who would seek its power. But you are different. You seek to take what is not yours." The words echoed in the chamber, filling every corner with a strange energy. The machine before them shifted, its vines twitching as though alive, and the ground beneath their feet trembled once more. The crew staggered, trying to keep their balance. Alira took a deep breath, her expression resolute. She didn't look afraid. In fact, she looked prepared. "We do not seek power," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We only wish to survive, to live. The galaxy has forgotten us, but we remember." The voice responded, its tone colder. "Now, survival is not your right. It is a privilege. You should have stayed away." Vrix's mind raced. This was no ordinary machine. This was something far more ancient, something far more dangerous. The words the voice spoke were not just a warning. They were a judgment. "We didn't ask for this," Vrix said, his voice growing louder. "We came because we found you. We came because the galaxy needs to know what's here. You cannot hide forever." The chamber grew darker. The light from the torches flickered out, and the machine's glow grew stronger, more intense. The air became thick with energy, almost suffocating. The crew struggled to breathe as the ground beneath them began to crack. "You don't understand," Alira whispered, almost to herself. "You are awakening something you cannot control." Before anyone could respond, a bright flash of light erupted from the machine. It was blinding, more intense than anything the crew had ever experienced. Vrix instinctively shielded his eyes, but it did no good. The light flooded the chamber, and in that instant the world seemed to warp. The very air around them seemed to stretch and distort, as though time itself was bending. When the light finally faded, the crew blinked, trying to adjust their eyes to the sudden change. The chamber had changed. It was no longer the dark, foreboding place they had entered. The walls were now covered in strange symbols, glowing with a soft, pulsating light. The air was thick with an unnatural presence, as though the very fabric of reality had shifted. The voice spoke again, but now it felt closer, more personal. "You have awakened us. Now you must face the consequences." Vrix's heart pounded in his chest. This was no longer about discovery or survival. This was something much greater. They had crossed a line, and now they would have to pay the price. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently. The chamber began to shake, and the walls groaned as if the very planet was being torn apart. The crew braced themselves, but it was too late. The chamber was collapsing around them. The machine, once a silent observer, now seemed to be alive, moving, shifting, pulling them in. It was as if it had awakened from a long slumber, and was no longer willing to remain dormant. Alira moved forward, her expression determined. "We have to go now." Vrix nodded. The time for questions was over. It was clear now that the Empire was not the only force with power in this galaxy, and this lost civilization, with its strange technology and ancient power, had just made one thing clear. The universe was far more dangerous than they had ever realized. As the crew scrambled to escape the collapsing chamber, Vrix couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever lay ahead, whatever secrets the humans had kept hidden for so long, the Empire was no longer in control. The galaxy was changing, and no one knew where it would lead. All he knew was that they were no longer just explorers. They were part of something much bigger, and it was too late to turn back now. The battle for the future, the echo of the collapsing chamber faded, but the rumblings continued to shake the ground beneath their feet. Vrix's mind raced as the crew scrambled to escape, their once confident steps now full of urgency. The walls groaned, cracking apart, and the floor seemed to tremble with a life of its own. The once peaceful and quiet world had now turned into a ticking time bomb. Vrix's heart pounded in his chest. The situation was spiraling out of control, but it wasn't just the collapse of the chamber that filled him with dread. It was the realization that whatever lay beneath the surface of this planet was far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. This was no longer a simple exploration mission. They had just stirred something ancient and powerful, something they were not equipped to handle. Alira, leading the charge out of the chamber, didn't hesitate. She had known this was coming, had prepared for this moment. Her expression was grim, but there was no fear in her eyes. She had lived through this before. This was just another battle for survival. The rest of the crew, on the other hand, were starting to panic. Their carefully controlled world was falling apart, and they had no idea how to deal with it. "Commander, we need to leave." Now, Kale's voice cracked as he shouted over the chaos. He had always been the calm one, but now his fear was palpable. "The planet is coming apart. We won't make it out if we don't move fast." Vrix nodded, his mind snapping into action. "Keep moving, everyone. Get to the ship, now." The crew made their way back through the ruins, their path illuminated by the flickering lights from the walls. The once beautiful carvings and symbols now seemed ominous, glowing with an eerie light, as if they were alive, watching the Empire's crew move with a sense of judgment. The ground beneath their feet continued to shake, cracks spreading like a spider's web across the stone. The air was thick with the weight of impending doom, and the crew was beginning to realize just how little control they had over this situation. "Vrix, look." Kale shouted as he pointed toward the sky. Vrix followed his gaze, and his stomach sank. The sky above had shifted from a calm blue to an angry red, swirling with dark clouds that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. The air crackled with static, and the once still atmosphere now hummed with a power that felt beyond comprehension. "This isn't just a natural disaster," Vrix muttered to himself. "This is something else. Something ... intentional." Alira, walking at the front of the group, turned to face him, her expression unwavering. "You still don't understand, do you?" she asked, her voice steady but full of weight. "This planet has a will of its own. It's not just a place, it's alive." Vrix swallowed hard, trying to process her words. "Alive? What do you mean by that?" She paused for a moment, her eyes reflecting the weight of centuries of hidden history. This planet is a sentient being. It has its own consciousness, and it has been waiting for a time like this, for an empire to come here to disturb the balance. Vrix's mind reeled at the implications. A sentient planet, a world that could manipulate its environment, create energy storms, and literally collapse its own structures. How could this be possible? The galaxy was full of mysteries, but this was something entirely new. The Empire had never encountered a threat like this before, and it seemed to be getting stronger by the minute. "We need to get out of here before it's too late," Alira said, her tone now laced with urgency. "The longer you stay, the more the planet will try to stop you. If you don't leave, it will destroy everything." At that moment, a deafening roar split the air. The ground beneath their feet shook with such force that they were nearly thrown off balance. Vrix looked up, his eyes wide with shock as massive cracks began to appear in the sky. Lightning, pure and crackling with energy, shot down from the swirling clouds, striking the ground with terrifying force. The air was alive with the raw power of the planet, and it was clear that the nebula's edge would not be able to escape if they didn't act fast. "Move, move!" Vrix shouted, his voice hoarse with panic. The crew sprinted toward the ship, dodging falling rocks and debris as the planet seemed to fight back with every passing moment. The ground itself seemed to rebel against them, shaking and shifting beneath their feet, making each step feel like a battle for survival. Finally, they reached the nebula's edge. The hatch was already open, and the crew scrambled inside, breathless and covered in dust. Vrix didn't hesitate. He slammed the control panel, sealing the hatch, and immediately ordered the engines to power up. "We have to get out of here," Vrix said, his voice filled with desperation. The ship's engines roared to life, but the planet wasn't done yet. As the nebula's edge lifted off, the sky above them erupted in a blinding flash of light. The ground beneath the ship cracked open like a wound, sending waves of shockwaves into the atmosphere. It was as if the planet itself was trying to swallow them whole, pulling at their very souls. "Steady, steady," Vrix shouted as the ship struggled to break free of the planet's grasp. The ship's thrusters pushed against the force, and for a moment, it seemed like they might be pulled back down. And then, with one final surge, the ship broke free, blasting into the sky, leaving the shattered remnants of the lost world behind. The crew collapsed into their seats, their breaths ragged, their minds reeling from what they had just experienced. "We made it," Cale gasped, looking out the window at the shrinking planet below. But there was no joy in his voice, no relief. Vrix stared at the view outside, his thoughts racing. The planet, the lost civilization, the strange sentience, it all felt like a dream, a nightmare that had somehow come to life. But there was no mistaking what they had just experienced. The Empire had discovered something far greater than they had ever imagined, and now it was too late to ignore the power that had been unleashed. "What now, Commander?" Cale asked quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. Vrix took a deep breath, his hands gripping the console in front of him. "Now we figure out what to do with the knowledge we've just uncovered, and pray that the galaxy is ready for what we've unleashed." The planet below them was disappearing into the distance, but the effects of its awakening were only just beginning. The battle for the future of the galaxy had just started, and the Empire would have to face a new reality, one where the hidden civilizations of the universe were far more powerful than they had ever imagined. The revelation of power. The nebula edge coasted through the stars, the crew exhausted and shaken by the chaos they had just narrowly escaped. Their eyes were fixed on the starboard window, staring out at the remnants of the planet they had just fled from. It was barely visible now, its surface cracked and scarred by the events that had unfolded. The planet was alive and it was not done with them yet. Vrix leaned forward in his seat, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The deeper he thought about it, the more his mind spun. This was not just a discovery, it was an awakening. The machine, the energy lines, the sentient planet, and the humans who had been living there in secret was all connected. And now that it had been stirred, the consequences could reach far beyond what they had experienced. "Commander," Cale's voice broke through his thoughts. "I don't think we're out of danger yet. The energy we felt on that planet, it's still following us. The ship's systems are picking up strange readings. It's as if we're being tracked." Vrix's heart skipped a beat. Tracked? By what? Cale shook his head, his face pale. "I don't know, but the energy signature from the planet, it's still here, in our wake. It's not normal, Commander. It's almost like it's alive." Vrix ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. Could the planet's power somehow have followed them? Could this sentient force reach beyond its physical confines and influence their ship, their journey? The implications were terrifying. "Run a full diagnostic on all systems," Vrix ordered, trying to mask the unease in his voice. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." As Cale worked, Vrix's thoughts drifted back to the events in the chamber. The moment they'd activated the artifact, the moment they'd awakened the machine, the surge of energy, the planets. Violent reaction, it was all connected. But why had the planet reacted so strongly to them? Was it protecting something, or was it punishing them for disturbing its slumber? Alira had warned them. She had said they would regret this. And now, as the ship hurtled through space, it seemed that the planet's power was not simply confined to its surface. It had reached out, following them, as if the world itself was trying to reclaim what had been disturbed. Suddenly, the ship's lights flickered, the hum of the engines dimmed, and an alarming alarm sounded through the corridors. "What's happening?" Vrix demanded, rising from his seat. Cale's voice was strained. "Commander, the power grid is failing. It's like something is draining our energy. We can't escape this field. Whatever it is, it's slowing us down." Vrix cursed under his breath. "We need to break free. Whatever is happening, it's not just a malfunction. The planet is still connected to us somehow. We need to get clear of it before it takes us down with it." He looked at Alira, who had remained silent throughout the tension-filled moments. Her eyes were distant, but Vrix could see the regret in them. She had warned them, but now it seemed like even she wasn't entirely certain how to fix the mess they had created. "What did you mean, Alira?" Vrix asked, his voice firm yet seeking answers. "When you said we would regret this, what did you mean by that?" Alira finally turned to face him, her expression hardening. "The planet... It's not just a place, it's a Bienga guardian, a protector. It has kept its power hidden for millennia, but now that you've triggered it, the balance is broken. You've awakened it, and with it, the energy it has been storing for centuries. That power... It's reaching for you. It's not going to let go." Vrix's mind raced. The planet's power was more than just a tool, it was a living, breathing force. And now it was actively trying to reclaim what was rightfully its own. The Empire had poked a sleeping giant, and it seemed there was no way to appease it. "Can't you control it?" Vrix pressed. "You've lived here, you understand. Its power." Alira shook her head slowly, her face grim. I've lived with it, yes. But that doesn't mean I can control it. It's not something to be controlled. It is the planet. It is its consciousness. You cannot fight it. You can only run. The words hit Vrix like a brick. He had always been a strategist, someone who could control the battlefield, manipulate outcomes, and bend situations to his will. But now, faced with a force that couldn't be controlled or understood, the sense of helplessness was suffocating. Run, Vrix repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. How can we run from something that's already inside us? It's following us, Alira. It's everywhere. How can we escape this? Alira met his gaze, her eyes dark with the knowledge she had kept hidden. You can't escape it. Not without understanding its true nature. But you can sever the connection. You need to find the source. The artifact, the machine, it's all connected. But there's a catch. The longer you wait, the stronger the connection becomes. And once it's fully connected to you, you will never escape. Vrix's mind spun as the weight of her words settled in. They were being hunted, not by a force they could see, but by something far older. This was no longer a chase between the Empire and an unknown world. This was something far more dangerous, a force that would not rest until it had reclaimed what had been disturbed. We need to find that source, Vrix said, determination returning to his voice. If there's any hope of stopping this, we need to go back. We need to understand what we've unleashed. Alira nodded, her face grim. I didn't want this for you, Commander. But now, you don't have a choice. If you're to survive, you must learn to face the power that's been unleashed. The Empire cannot win this war. Not unless you understand the true nature of the energy you've disturbed. The reality of their situation was setting in. The Empire had come seeking control, but now they were running out of time. The energy from the planet had latched onto them, and there was no way to sever the connection without first understanding what lay beneath the surface of that ancient world. Vrix looked out the window, the stars flashing by as the nebula's edge sped through space. The battle was far from over. It had only just begun, and for the first time in his career, Vrix wondered if the Empire would survive the consequences of their discovery, or if it would be consumed by the very power it had awoken. The decision, the nebula's edge sailed through the darkness of space, its crew battered, their minds racing. The situation was beyond anything Vrix had ever encountered. The Empire, usually a force of control and precision, was now at the mercy of a power they couldn't understand. The once promising mission to explore the lost world had spiraled into a desperate fight for survival. Vrix stood at the ship's command console, his eyes locked on the screen. The distant, fading image of the planet, still surrounded by the dark energy, was a constant reminder of their failure to control what they had awakened. Despite the ship's best efforts to outrun the planet's grasp, the energy signature continued to follow them, trailing in their wake like a shadow that refused to be shaken off. We can't outrun it, Commander, Kale said quietly, his voice heavy with frustration. It's everywhere. I've analyzed the readings. We're being pulled toward it, whether we like it or not. Vrix turned away from the screen, his face pale. Then what are we supposed to do? If we can't run, can we fight it? Alira, standing at the back of the command center, spoke softly, yet her words carried the weight of years spent living with the power of the planet. You can't fight it. This isn't a battle you can win with weapons or force. It's a force of nature, a consciousness that stretches beyond physical boundaries. It is not just a power, it is the very essence of the planet itself. Vrix clenched his fists, trying to control the storm of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. He had been trained to lead, to conquer, but this was beyond even his understanding. The Empire had ruled over countless systems with power and fear, yet here they were, helpless against something older and far more dangerous than they could comprehend. "But we can't just surrender," he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. "The Empire won't stand by while something like this threatens everything we've built." Alira looked at him, her expression softer now, though the sadness in her eyes was unmistakable. "I'm not asking you to surrender. I'm asking you to understand. The Empire's strength lies in its ambition, its desire for control. But control cannot be had here, not without consequence." Vrix's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" Alira's gaze hardened as she stepped forward, her voice firm. "The decision is simple. You have two choices. You can continue to fight the planet, try to outsmart it, and risk everything in the process. Or you can accept that the planet's power is beyond your control. You can leave it alone and return to your galaxy, or you can learn from it. You can let it guide you, show you a way of existence that isn't rooted in domination or conquest." Her words hit Vrix like a punch to the gut. The idea of leaving it all behind, the Empire, the systems they had conquered, the power they had accumulated, was unthinkable. But the other option, to embrace the planet's power and allow it to shape their future, that was a step into the unknown, a leap of faith that could change everything. For a long moment, Vrix stood in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. The crew, too, had fallen silent, waiting for their leader to speak. They trusted him, but even he could sense that this was no ordinary decision. This was a moment that could alter the course of the Empire forever, or destroy it. Finally, Vrix spoke, his voice steady but filled with an unshakable resolve. "We've come this far. We can't just turn back now. We've seen the power of this place, and we've felt its pull. But the Empire is not just about control. It's about survival. And if we want to survive, we need to adapt. We need to learn how to coexist with this power, not fight it." Alira's face softened as she heard his words. "You're making the right choice. But you must understand, once you accept the planet's power, there is no going back. You will change. The Empire will change." Vrix nodded, his decision made. "I understand, and I'm ready for that change." With that, he turned to the crew, who had been anxiously watching him. "Prepare the ship. We're going back to the planet." As the crew set to work, Vrix's mind raced. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, he felt a strange sense of peace. The Empire had always relied on its strength and ambition, but now it would have to rely on something else, something deeper, something that couldn't be controlled or contained. The nebula's edge turned, heading back toward the planet that had set this chain of events into motion. As the ship neared the planet's orbit, Vrix stood at the command console, his gaze fixed on the swirling, glowing planet below. It was no longer a symbol of fear or danger, had become a symbol of the future, of change. The planet's power would no longer be a threat to the Empire. It would be its guide. "Let's make history," Vrix said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "Let's find a new way." And as the ship descended once more, the energy that had been chasing them seemed to pull back, as if acknowledging the decision that had been made. The Empire, once a force of domination and control, was now on the precipice of something far greater, something that would shape the galaxy in ways they couldn't yet understand. The decision had been made. The future was theirs to shape.